have a lot of smoke coming out of the exhaust. I'm literally going to start work on the engine today, in particular the exhaust section. I'm feeling very trepidatious about it. It's Monday morning, and that means it's the first day at work. Not too far to wander or hobble in some person's cases from our abode to the boat. Literally 100 metres. Just got to duck under a few other people's boats, that's all. Don't bang your noggin on the first day on the job. And there she is. Actually, just before we start work, I'm just going to move some of her jewellery making equipment and artist equipment from the boat to the studio we're staying at. Then I can move all of the bedding from both of the aft berths forward into the Princess Suite, because I'm literally going to rip those apart and start work on the engine today. In particular, the exhaust section of the engine, and see how that goes. I'm feeling very trepidatious about it. Is that a word, trepidatious?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's a word now. Yeah, I'm just hoping it's not as bad as I'm thinking it is in my mind. We'll find out, I guess. The starboard aft cabin is now empty of the mattress. Well, just let me show you this thing here. That there is diesel engine soot, and that's how much soot was running around in the engine bay and creeping up through the gaps. A few things that were on the shelf are certainly going to need to be washed thoroughly. But first, let's find out why we have that soot in the engine bay. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. I just spent the morning in the engine bay taking apart the exhaust system. So this is the exhaust mixing elbow. The hot exhaust fumes come out of the engine and go in here. The hot water from the engine cooling system comes in here. They mix in here and they exhaust out of here. That's all pretty good. In fact, it's in fairly decent nick considering. But your biggest problem is that we've got a big rusted hole in here. Very big hole. That's where all the soot was coming out of, and basically that means
It's cactus.
it is a cactus exhaust elbow.
And we need a new one.
We do.
Okay. Well, is that sort of better than tote in one sense?
Looking at it, I'm very pleased with the way it looks. But obviously, you know, the engine bay is sooty.
Tell me about it.
I've washed my hands since I finished work.
Gosh, you didn't do a very good job, did you? And whose sink did you use?
So,
Okay. All right. So well done.
yeah.
All right. So what's your next job?
Next move is to clean the engine and the engine bay as much as possible.
Okay.
Just looking at the port side of the engine, this is the hole that the exhaust gases come out of the engine, and they mix with water in the exhaust elbow that's here, and then everything goes out through that pipe there. So we've got the exhaust elbow off and we've had the holes in it repaired, but next week we're going to hire a car and go to a town on the north of the island where a guy custom makes exhaust elbows from stainless steel. So we're going to take it up there to him and find out what sort of cost that would be to get one made. Another job that needs doing before we put everything back together is to take the heat exchanger off the engine and give that a good inspection and clean out. We do believe that there are some bits of impeller rubber somewhere hiding in there. And because of all the diesel soot that was being blown out of the hole in the mixing elbow, we've got to have a pretty good big cleanup of the engine overall. Here we are looking at the engine from the starboard side, and this space here is where the air filter air intake is, so that's all got to be really cleaned up to make sure that we've got a lot of that diesel soot that was being blown into the engine compartment by the broken exhaust elbow. That's all got to be cleared up, and there's a heck of a lot more cleaning to be done here. This is an oil filter, and it was put onto the engine exactly the same time as this fuel filter was, and you can see it is very, very dirty with the soot. So lots and lots of cleaning needed to be done here. These are the inspection hatches which have been removed so we can get easier access to the engine while we're working on it, but they've got a sound deadening foam on them, and the diesel soot has really penetrated into the foam. So we're going to have a look at how we can clean them up and see what they look like when we've had a go at cleaning them up. It might be that we might have to replace all of this sound deadening foam. And while we've got the aft starboard cabin in disarray, we will be removing this big piece of plywood, which is the base for the bed, so that we can get better access to the fuel tank. We want to basically just have a look in there, see if there's any sludge in the bottom of the tank, and also check for diesel bug. Just having a look inside the exhaust elbow that has been repaired, you can see in there some globules of liquid which is still seeping out of the metal. So it has been repaired, but obviously there's a lot more going on inside there than meets the eye. There is the solder where the repair was made. The guy here at the yard actually fabricated a whole new neck. But yeah, a new one would be preferable to sticking this back on, because it does obviously have a limited shelf life. We have spent some time taking the caulking or Sikaflex away from the deck and keel joint, and it's not looking too bad at all on the port side here. But when we go around to the starboard side, that's not looking too bad. But we now have another concern here. This is something that has been filled, and it is weeping quite a lot. It's not too much of a concern really, because the keel is actually a solid piece of iron, so obviously something's being filled here. So we're going to have to take that right back down to the iron and find out what's going on in this area. So the deeper we dig, the more we find. This is looking at the port side of the keel, and it's dried out quite nicely. I think what we're probably going to try and do is strip back the keel to the bare metal and put epoxy primer on it, quite a few layers of that, and then also obviously anti-foul here on the starboard side. While we were scraping all of this away, we noticed a little bit of a weeping happening here, and it looks like it's being filled, but filled wrong. There was a bit of a crack in there, and again that has dried out quite nicely. But when we take the keel back to the bare metal, we'll have a look at exactly what's going on here and do this job properly from the beginning. We can also see, if we look up at the hull, you can see here the outline of where the hull was wet. So again, we're going to take the anti-foul and everything else off from here and see exactly what's going on there in the hull, and put everything back together again. So quite a big job coming up on this.
It's a tad cold today, isn't it, love?
A tad cold. And Nikos has just sent me a video of the pass over Evia to Kalkis, and I don't think it's helping somehow.
Why?
I just hate the snow and cold, and
So it's why?
there's snow up there, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was born to live at the equator, not at these latitudes.
Okay. So how many layers have you got on to keep warm?
T-shirt, sweater, hoodie, scarf, and the inner lining from my wet weather gear.
Okay. And how about your feet?
Oh, my feet are definitely going to have to put my shoes on, because these slippers are just not doing it for me.
Even though?
Even though I'm right next to the heater.
Fan heater.
Yeah. It's just not doing it.
Poor boy.
Well, here's a bit of a surprise. We're in a car, and it's not our car because neither of us are driving.
It's a warm car.
It's a warm car as well. Sunday lunchtime, we had a knock on the door, and when we opened the door, to our surprise, there stood Nikos. He'd actually brought to our place an oil heater that he hasn't been using for some time, so to keep us warm throughout the winter, which is very kind. And now Nikos is taking us to one of the towns up north, and we're going to go have a beer and maybe a lunch or two.
And we're going to buy lunch.
Yeah.
Thank you. And this is his lovely white Calliope. Cool.
Some of our viewers have actually said, how come you never show the beer actually being drunk? So, cheers. We're actually in Limney at the moment, just having a couple of beers and waiting for Greek lunchtime to roll around, which is a little bit later than midday, and then we're going to go to a restaurant.
We're going to have something to eat and to have Ansa read us more Greek phrases like the one.
Okay. I'll be fluent by the end of today.
Oh yeah. No, you think you will.
Okay. You should tell us all about foreplay and the hour after.
Okay. It's so pretty. We felt so sorry for Baus with his cold feet and noticed that he had lots of holes in his socks, which he hadn't told me about. So we bought him 3 new pairs and they're nice and thick, so he's got lovely warm feet now. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Sailing ABC. If you have, remember to give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and remember to ding that bell so that you get notified of future updates. Thanks for watching and see you next time.